Hello. Hello. Yeah, as mentioned, I'm Andrew. Let me just make sure. Uh-oh. Was it forward? Oh, there it goes. Okay. I don't know if that was slow or if I pressed the wrong button. I'll find out when I try to go to my next slide. Hello. Yeah, this is, my name is Andrew, and this is, I think I called it No Money, No Problems, about DIY indie publishing. If you're unfamiliar with who I am, I'm only granted around here every so often. I, as you can see, have no industry experience, no ship titles, no really viable credentials at all within the indie game space or the game space, but I've been publishing an anthology for 5 years despite all that. And okay, so I did find the right number. So I've been publishing a collection called Indiepocalypse for the last 5 years despite a complete lack of inroads or connections or money or much of anything. And if you're unfamiliar, Indiepocalypse is a monthly anthology of sort of like alternative games. It's a collection of 10 games every month. I commission artists to do covers. I commission developers to make games. I feature developers all over the world, and I pay people up front. I pay them royalties. It's just basically a small DIY scale publishing effort to support people who are making shorter, more personal, more experimental games, because I would say like 6 years ago, I was at the point of like at my third abandoned project, I think, or something like that. And I was like, I'm sick of trying to make a game that's a commercial length, but boy, would I like to also get money and not work a terrible job. And the two ideas felt incompatible, so I tried starting this. And I don't think I got much closer to viability so far for short independent projects, but it's closer. It's the amount is now non-zero. But you may have heard the term Indiepocalypse before. It's a term that I've since borrowed, co-opted, and stolen all the SEO for. It is the idea of that there are too many games in the world, or, oh, I can't make money anymore because there are all these people making games. And that itself is kind of like an absurd notion. You know, everyone here could make games, because I think when I think about that term, when I think about the term Indiepocalypse, when I think about the idea of too many games, too many people making games, I think the important framing to think is, well, when you say we can't make money anymore because there's too many people making games, who are the we that can't make money anymore, and who are these too many people that have come in all of a sudden? And it feels more of a vibe of people like, oh, well, like every other art form, it's democratized, everyone can do it. It's a free open space. So really it's just that the people who had kind of a long head start, whether it's industry connections, a good amount of money to sit around to spend 5 years making a game, that sort of thing. It's kind of like those inherent head starts have vanished a little, and that leaves the feeling that maybe everybody's like, well, damn, I can't make anything making games. No one's going to see my game. But in reality, hey, that's fine. You don't need to have everyone see your game. A lot of this talk is about the space between indie dev of nothing and full-time success, which is a wide kind of like unexplored space, I believe, within games. So the important question of this DIY publishing talk of that hopefully people are like, this DIY publishing, how can I make money? How can I be a publisher? So the important thing of who can publish games, and that is literally anyone. Anyone can do it tomorrow. Like I said, I had a day job and 10 years paying off of debt, I suppose. But that little bit goes a long way towards having space to publish something, because publishing doesn't mean like, fully bankrolling a game that is a 3-year project. Publishing is like putting out your game and bringing it to a farmer's market. It's like, think of a band, who just like plays a local bar gig and they have CDs on their merch table, That's just publishing. It's all just like publishing. It's all getting your work out there is publishing, and kind of like striving for the perfect sort of like wish list to, I got to get my 10 million TikTok engagements. I need to get all these like arbitrary metrics is kind of just like I think an increasingly, it's just like the most recent version of like, how do I get rich quick? How do I get, like, what is the solution to my problem of I need a little formula that says, yes, this is how you make a successful indie game, and that formula doesn't exist. And I think really the thing that game dev is running into with Indiepocalypse, with the idea of too much, nobody gets money, is that indie games are just where all other artists are. Think of how many artists are making art full time, and especially how many artists are making their own art full time. Like whether they're musicians or painters or artists or actors or anybody, it's just like, that's just art. Like it's like any other career, like any other business. They're difficult, unviable. But doing it yourself, I think the important thing of DIY is that it's not really like the yourself part. I think can be easily forgotten. Like I think games can get kind of clustered sometimes, and like especially if you're working on one project for such a long time, it's like here is our project, here is our game, we are working on it, we're doing our thing, we have our Discord, we have our social media presence, we have our this and that, but you can, like, there's a lot of strength in, indie devs, like, working together, and just, like, working together with other artists, there's the idea of working shows together, the idea of tabling together. I knew someone, they sent me a bad example because the collaboration fell through, but someone was working on the idea of making a split EP, so to speak, but within games, where a release where one person, each person made one game, and putting it out like that. But there are all sorts of ways to work together, to, engage, I don't like the word engage, just like talk to each other. I think a lot about the aforementioned game loop. I went to a talk on, DIY marketing. I don't think DIY was the turn of phrase, but something to that effect. And it was weird that only one person's solution was like, talk to other people, cross-promote each other. Like, I think it's easy to, like, need the feeling to get yours when I think there's a lot of space to, like, not get yours, and I think that's fine. I think games are moving increasingly towards like hobbyist space in games is really great. Games as a side activity is really great. If you ask the IRS, they still want to know how much you made on hobbyist income. They're still interested in that. There's a wide swath between games being a full-time career and games being something you keep entirely to yourself that no one's ever given you any money for, and that's part of what. And this little guy is just fun. This little graphic is. Indiepocalypse contributors around the world that have submitted their location information for like my contributor page, and there are people everywhere, and that's part of like why, like, 'cause I can go to like local events and I can bring people from like it's kind of hard to get from New Zealand or like Indonesia over to Boston for like Boston Fig, but through like sort of like publishing I can do that, and I can bring these sorts of using my strengths I have to bring those to other people. Yes, and the important thing about collaboration, just email people. Like, it's super easy to do. You can just, like, find someone and be like, hey, I think you're cool. Find someone's email. If you look hard enough, you can find someone's email. And if you really, really have to, you can just DM them somewhere. But, the first part of, like, publishing, so to speak, is publishing other people. I just came back from Toronto on Sunday, and within that, I know someone up there, a developer who goes by Ash K, who has started publishing, like physically publishing and selling at local, like Toronto Game Expo and other local markets and consignment shops at bookstores, other people's games in a little physical form factor that I'll have on a different later slide. But the idea of publishing is really just having a little bit more money than somebody else, or, to whatever scale. So if somebody needs you to have, like, a full-time, like, amount of money, if someone's looking for a publisher that has, like, is going to pay them and maybe 3 other people a livable wage, maybe you need to be, like, a Devolver or a Annapurna. I couldn't remember if they were semi-around still, but if you were, if you're publishing someone who has no money, no budget, you just need to have a budget of maybe $50. Like, there is a startling number of people that I've published and organized, because Indiepocalypse, pays people up front, pays people royalties. Have said like, not only like, oh, this is the most money I've ever made off of my game. It's also like, oh, this is the first time I ever got paid for my game at all, that anyone's ever given me any money for it. Because I think, within the hobbyist space, there isn't it's kind of like, if you really want to think about money, it is a healthy untapped market of like, small scale hobbyist development. But that's just also like, in the same way that like, you look at Bandcamp and you see that ticker go by of 1 million little albums of bands you have never heard of all over the world, just like selling things and making like little bits here and there, and they're probably all working day jobs, How like unless they're like selling arena shows, chances are a band is working a day job, they or like really, really, really touring a lot. And that's like, a lot of it is like the same scale. I think like indie dev needs to kind of like settle into like, man, day jobs are really handy. Because, hey, where do you get the money to just like do game dev full time? And especially as more schools like start having game dev programs, and there are more and more students, and we have more and more broke game dev students who are like, let's start a studio. I guess with my friends, because none of us have any money to hire anybody, because we're all increasingly broke students. Working in this like smaller scale really helps you to just like not worrying about like, I've never actually published anything on Steam so far to this point, or like Epic or any of these things, and maybe there's money in that, I don't know, but there's also like, it's like, I guess technically I'm in a weirder situation. I have like 60 things, so that's like $3,000 or something ridiculous if I was to do it now and I hadn't started it. But like all these things are like things to consider, like what do I want to do, and like what are the more like non-traditional avenues to like go down, like besides like, it's every like if you're not really, the main game advice, it is the whatever, like get your previews ready, do your wish list, participate in Next Fest, come out whenever, run your sales here and there. But that's also the same thing you were doing, your friends are doing, EA is doing, like anyone between like 0 to billions of dollars, that is the strategy. So it's about finding like the niches within that. And also, realistically, I think if you look at like commercial indie games, like that space represents like such a small, I feel like, percentage of like what the medium is like in terms of like expression and what they do. And so I'm cutting trailers and I go, well, how do you cut a snappy 10-second clip of a Twine game? I haven't figured it out yet. You just click on the hyperlinks and hope it looks really nice. But like, and so does that mean if you work in IF, you're just screwed? You're just like, oh, I can't publish anything. But no, because you can go to Narrowscope's what happening this week? I'm getting a nod that it's this week. And that, those kinds of things. And Boston has a long IF history as well. And so like that itself is like a fraction of things. If you're focusing on like the shiniest version of game dev, that's like a kind of like DIY that's already been existing. Like they are regularly running IF comp and all these things that kind of focus on a smaller scale, more focused kind of like, oh, this is the thing that we want to do. We want to make IF. We want to support IF, and that's what we want to do. And there's a lot of room to be made into, yes, okay, this is a slide that's a reminder for myself that I was going to probably be talking very high-minded of like conceptual concepts of like, oh, you could just like publish stuff whenever you want. Like, what if you just like hung out and like made games that were like, what if you like borrowed Mario models and just kind of made your own games with it and just kind of put them online? Like, who's going to stop you? Is Nintendo come and kick down your door? I don't think so. Call it collage work. Hey, call it whatever you want. You can just do whatever you want. But eventually, I'm sure some people are like, oh, indie DIY publishing. I want to figure out how you do this stuff. I want to get down to the nitty gritty of like, I want to make some money. I'm working a terrible retail job every day. How do I get like a little bit less money or a little bit more money so I can go, what if I worked 30 hours in retail? And that's so one of the big things I would say is events. I don't remember if I said in my beginning slide, because I wasn't looking at it, and I wrote it not this morning. But Indiepocalypse to date, in its 5 years, I believe of the 67 issues, 4 of them have made a profit. And also to date, I'm not stopping. I have, 2 more already done, basically. I'm going to continue to keep doing it. There's no like clear version of this where it's like, hey, I'm not making this anymore because it makes no money, because like a lot of art just doesn't make money, and it will never make money, it'll never make an income amount of money. And I think that's what like gets a lot of people to quit. Like you spend, 3 to 5 years, and hopefully maybe you make a game. Sometimes you don't even finish the game, and you just like, it burns you out and you're done, you're gone. And then, or like you do it, you go, oh, I made money, but like not enough money to like sustain a studio, or not enough money to like, well, I just can't, or you just get fried out, there's and it like assumes a lot of like stuff to have ahead of time, you have your pie in the sky, like, oh, I wish I could work on Cuphead and mortgage my house to fund my dream indie game. It's like, where'd you get a house? A lot of these, like, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of assumption comes with it. But to listen to my own advice and get focused on not talking in this weird, high-minded, overly abstract, like, hey, what if let's all just get passionate about making weird art? Events are like kind of like the lifeblood of Indiepocalypse at this point. In 2020, I smuggled it onto the floor of PAX East with a badge I had bought from someone I met in Ohio, and sold it out of a bag. And then I was not expecting a global shutdown. And then in 2024, turns out I was right. It was made for events. It was a tangible thing to get in front of people. It doesn't show well online. And a lot of things, I think, like I mentioned with like IF and a lot of like text-based stuff, or a lot of things really just like don't show well online, especially in like short snippets. These like, there are a million good games that just will not ever show well on the TikTok. Like no matter how hard you try, you just cannot put them into them and make it look like, not do it without like degrading the game almost to some degree of like, how can I cram SpongeBob into my game that is like the least insulting way to my game, because I know people will pay more attention to it if it looks like a meme. And part of it is events. People are like way more focused at events, and despite the unprofitability of it, the important thing that I mentioned that I was at PAX East. PAX East is, I can drive to it, but still it's very expensive to get a booth at PAX East. But I made my money back at PAX, and that's even with my I take percentages of things, but I've also done like Boston Fig and Toronto Games Week. I did for free because someone just invited me to do a small emporium at the table. But there are like ways to do like local, small scale pop-up events. Amaze was out in like Berlin, and these were all within the past. Toronto Games Week was literally Sunday. And these are all like different scales of events. Like, even pre-Indiepocalypse, Chris in the back there I was working with Chris to do like local Boston, you might have even seen it, his like local farmers markets down at Boston Hassle. Boston Hassle's still going. They're annoying now. I think you have to like contact them through Instagram or something. They got rid of the Google form, and I'm pissed off and I don't use it now because it's annoying. But that's like a $40 event in Cambridge. You can go there and just like, hey, I'll set up a table. I bring my own table. It's $40. I got to sell like 5-6 things, and then I'm good for the day. And it's about like DIY publishing is about like the DIY-ness of it. I guess I should have better defined DIY at some point. But the idea of like, you just do it like with like on whatever you have, like whatever tiny scraps of resources you have is what you just do it with. Like, it's about not waiting for like the perfect version of the marketing budget, or like, oh, I got to get the perfect asset, the perfect, I need the best logo, I need the best this and that. No, you just need what you have at the time, because like there's a million versions of, there's no such thing as perfect, or like, perfect always takes so long because it don't exist, like you'll stress out doing it forever. And then so I was able, I go to PAX and I get in front of people, and these are like, to speak on marketing, if you're unfamiliar with like generally the work I do with Indiepocalypse, when I say like the fringes, I sometimes mean like the extreme fringes of like games as an interactive medium, and like what like is far away from like the idea of the standard commercial. You're a little guy who runs around and gets points and maybe levels up. As far from that point you can get, and sometimes I do feel like I am like sneaking them under people and being like, oh, these are all indie games, just check them out, and then they'll be like, oh, they tricked me. This is weird art stuff. But I've had enough people like come back of like, remember going to MagFest, which is also just a very cool event that I recommend in general. But I remember going to MagFest and someone coming, people coming like midday one day, be like, hey, we went to our hotel room, we played them all, give us another one. And it's like, there is room for like a lot more experimentation in games. Even like, if you look at major releases, like no one will tell you could make Cruelty Squad until somebody made Cruelty Squad. And then people go, oh, this connects with people. Weirdness connects with people. It's like, I think of it as like the spark of another human is what it is. Like, oh, I saw a person who wanted to make this. Somebody wanted to make this game, and not like they thought, whoa, roguelikes are popular right now. And deck builders are pretty popular too. How can I combine those two in a way that is nice and viable and marketable? And at that point, I mean, that is a way to do game dev, but I'm also like, I'm here to say that just feels like a job at that point. At what point are you doing that? Like, is that much different? I mean, for me to do that, that's not that much different than like, working a warehouse job. It's like, well, technically, I guess I'm in games, but I'm just doing like what I think a viable version of a game is. And the DIY, the alternative approach to it is, as I say, the deeply unprofitable, as a warning, but not zero, I would say, which is also very important. Is like you can carve out more niches, and like you can hopefully be like, actually that was a good line to say. So part of how I do this is, hey, these things, I call them tapes, or some other people call them Zets. The one on the left is Zets, which is like a much nicer version of the ones that I make. They have like little keychains and postcards and a little mini zine inside of it. That's way more time intensive. I just stick them in a thing and put a piece of tape on them. But this is like my solution for it. Chris put like a floppy disk and had like little codes on the back of floppy disks. And it's just like, you can go to events and bring like if you bring like a tangible thing, people, increasingly over time, people love tangible things. They want to like to hold something, and that's like a thing now that people can like trade. Like I was talking to a past contributor, and one of her friends was moving, and she had bought like the game she had made for Indiepocalypse. And she's like, "I'm unloading. Here's your copies." Like it's becoming a thing that you can like, when you're moving, you downsize to your friends, and that's something you can't do with like a Steam code. You can't do it with a digital download, or you can't be like, "Hey, I've got this really cool game. Hey friend, I'm going to toss it to you. There you go. It's yours now." Or you could even copy those floppies and pass them to friends. I'm not the boss of you, And I think people are looking for that. I think there's like more space. Toronto Games Week, which I mentioned earlier. Ash up there has been doing that kind of publishing for basically the Greater Toronto area. So I was not the only one for a relieving time. I was not the first one of these weird little cassette tape things at an event. So there was like 1, 2, 3, there was like 4 other people, to the point where a guy there selling music, people were confused that he's like, "What are these?" He's like, "Oh, these are cassette tapes. They have music in them." They thought they were games. And these are also like the most important thing about DIY. Those are cheap as hell to produce. I would say they cost on average like $2. To get really nitty gritty of money, sticks will cost you like $1 something ish off AliExpress, Alibaba, and really if you're getting them in bulk from a US vendor, that's where they're getting them from anyway. So you might as well just cut out the middleman. Same thing with like cassette cases. You can get the musicians still putting stuff on cassette, so cassette cases readily available. You can even get them with like nice pegs taken out. Like there's a place, I think it's called Duplication, that sells them actually without pegs. But I like the pegs in there because I'm cheap, and those are cheaper ones. And then like those J cards, paper's cheap. Printing stuff on paper also pretty cheap. And so like you have like what the equivalent is for like, you know, you think if anyone's ever been to mice, you know, like I am envious and I strive for something that like is for mice but for games. Like developers, like here are all our finished games. I'm here with them, buy them. You can buy them from me. And people at mice are ravenous. When I was up in Toronto, I was talking to a friend, and she was talking about people had gone to TCAF, which is a similar, very similarly vibed event in Toronto, and same thing, like, oh, TCAF is where I make all my money, because it's a culture of people looking for independent work, and that like it's kind of like publishing. When I get to like truly like publishing your games physically, it's like work small and work quick, because like. One of the weird anecdotal things I find, and I stress anecdotal, when I go to events and I have people go, I don't really play games very much. Like the understanding I was coming from historically was like, oh, well, because video games were like violent shoot guy games. And they're like, oh, they just take so much time. And like, I think there's increasing idea like, well, whether it's like, Fortnite or Animal Crossing, the link and connection between these two things is they take all of your time from you. And one you happen to shoot people, one you happen to collect bugs. You probably collect bugs in Fortnite. Fortnite does friggin' everything. But the point, and then so I think there is like also like an appetite for like shorter, smaller games and more personal experiences and more just like people. I don't know if you've seen like art outside of games, but people like a lot of weird stuff. People are not just like fully like all in on like commercial art. And I think there's like, but it's also, and then like events are kind of like part of the way you break through that noise of the internet, which kind of makes it hard, I think, sometimes for things that are a little different to break through. So you can like, you could tomorrow, or you could, speaking of email, someone email me, I make these too, for devs at cost, but you could sign up for like a Boston Hassle one day and just like, I'll see how it is, And then people go, oh, you make games? Like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know people were making games here. And like I think a lot about the scope of, imagine if you've been to a con and like Artist Alley, and you're familiar with the concept, and then imagine if no one at Artist Alley was selling anything. Imagine if they were just like, here's some pictures I'm working on. Here are some drawings here's half a comic I have. Here's a charm, I kind of started painting it, You can look at it, wish list it for later. And like, think of what the demographics of Artist Alley, they would shift dramatically, because these things, like, they become way more cost prohibitive. But when you can, like, all those events earlier, I would probably do Boston Fig, maybe Toronto Games Week if I was feeling fancy because it was free. It was just a flight to Toronto with the cost. But I wouldn't do PAX. I wouldn't go to Berlin if I wasn't selling anything. In practical sense, I couldn't do that. I just couldn't afford it. It's expensive. But like small scale publishing and like promoting small scale publishing in games gives you more space to be able to do that. Gives more people different space to be able to like, oh yeah, we can table at a con because we're going to make some of our money back from their con. And it's easier for most people, I would say, than me, because most people are also not splitting things like 11 ways, Usually not splitting it anyways, or with like a smaller team. So what do I have after that? Oh yeah, you're right. This is where the strength of unsustainability. Really, like I was talking to someone who did like poetry publishing out of Boston Hassle, and she was saying like, we were just talking about, because weirdly enough we had shared a contributor in common. Like they had published someone's short fiction, I'd published their game, and they. I'm trying to blank on the name. I think it's Corvid Press or Corvid Queen Press, to shout out other small press publishers. We were talking about like, oh, the nice thing about small press publishing is you can do that because nobody's telling you can't do it. No one can really stop you from doing it. It's just like a thing that you can just like, oh yeah, I just like Indiepocalypse does not cost me very much money every month. Like I don't know, like depending on how much covers cost, give or take, it's only like $700 a month. And like that was basically the money I was spending on like student loans and car payments. And I was like, what if I turn this into art? And it's something you can do for like 5 years. And I've I wish I had stats of money. That would have been a smart thing to put on this slide of like how much I've distributed in royalties over these 5 years. But it's a lot of money. It's like tens of thousands or whatever. And that's like a thing that, do I have anything after this? I don't think I do. Oh, no, I don't have, I'm so smart, I left myself an endpoint. But yeah, let me check. I don't know what the time is on all of this. I should have been watching that. Oh, I got plenty of time. I think. Yeah, I said you usually do questions. I wanted to make sure I did not run past the possibility of questions because I've done. Yes, I can. I can, I think. Oh, I should point at my computer. How do I go back? There we go. Oh, because I turned it upside down, that's why. Hello.
Yeah, let's give a round of applause for Andrew first.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we can take some questions. Can someone else help me run the mic around? I am not really capable of running.
Oh, I can.
Well, you have to stand here and answer.
I do have to stand there. What if I just want to get in the muck of it with the people?
I mean, that's what you like. Want to do a floor show?
No.
It's all good. If anyone has questions, just raise your hand and Mark will bring a mic over to you. While I stand here.
So I didn't really hear anything about like the scalability.
Oh, yes.
So like the population of planet Earth is like 7 billion people.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
So I think a lot of people get really intimidated by the idea of like, oh, my game's not very successful if I don't, I see these metrics from the successful game.
Right.
Clear Sphere sells however many millions of copies, right?
Yeah.
But say you publish your small title for $5, and like you sell your game to 0.00001% of the planet.
Right.
Slap it on Steam. You sell it for $5. That's like 7,000 people. That's like 35 grand.
Yes, that's a lot.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to make a statement. It wasn't really.
No, that's like I run to in a even more microcosm situation. I run to a similar benefit at like I think about when I do like pop culture anime cons that have a indie game section. Most of those people are not there for games, but if there are like 60,000 people at Anime NYC, I need to sell to 1% of those people. And that's like, when you think about. You made something, 1,000 people like it. That's a lot of people, I think being able to see everybody else's success really like dwarfs you because you also don't see how everyone else got there, what everyone else, advantages they may have had to get there, You don't see their six-figure partner just like while they're like lounging on their computer, for 5 years, while someone just like, funds their entire time. But yeah, no, like you said, it is easy to compare yourself to the people who have the biggest audiences, but you shouldn't. It'll. Yeah, I know. It's hard to get rid of imposter syndrome. It's hard to be like, well, why aren't I ultra successful? My advice is release a lot because from personal experience, if you release a lot and you fail constantly, you eventually just get used to it. Like after you send 20 months worth of press emails that go completely unanswered, you go, whatever. I'm still doing it. I'm still alive. Whatever. It's fine. So it's just like.
I'm gonna clap for that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's somebody at PAX handed me their business card, and I was like, I know you. I emailed you like 30 times. And what I didn't say was like, should I email you for the 31st time that you won't answer me? Or what should I do? What am I supposed to do with this thing? Like, it was like this weird thing where I was like, because I spent $2,000 on the PAX booth, is my work real now? Like there's also like the like artifice around like commerce, and like I was talking to a dev on Sunday and he said something that like a very succinct way of putting something I think about is like the weird way of like putting money on something. We were talking about like freeware games and how hard it is sometimes to promote and share freeware games, and he's like, it's weird how like putting a price tag on something gives people permission to like it. And And that's kind of like, I think a lot of people want to like a lot of stuff, but it's like weird to get into freeware stuff. And like, if you say, hey, my Weirdo game is $5, people are like, oh, I like it. You should check this out. You should check. Yeah. We've gone far from the point, but I just ramble a lot.
Well, sell your vampire. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sell your vampire survivors for like $2.
Exactly. Right.
People buy it.
Right.
It's worth money if you put effort into it.
Right. It's something you made. Like, and you know, worst case scenario, you might be underappreciated. You might be appreciated after your lifetime. The true dream of every artist.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I was gonna say we should like repeat the questions, but that was a pretty tough one to I feel like.
Yeah, I tried to. Hello.
I'm just curious, is Indiepocalypse going to be at Fan Expo as Starbucks?
I don't know what Fan Expo is. What is Fan Expo?
Uh,
Okay. When is it?
August 8th, August 10th, I believe.
It's probably too late. It is going to be, speaking of like, you know, the viability, what am I doing? I'm doing PAX West, then I'm doing, Anime NYC is first, then PAX West, then GQCon, then probably just any other things that slide across my way. But it's something I can do, like it's the small press, you know, sometimes small press people don't republish things because each production then funds the next thing in some degree. But no, I will also keep an eye on Fan Expo. Does Fan Expo have like an indie game section?
I believe we have a games section, but I'm not sure about indie games
Okay.
specifically.
I can probably sneak my way
That
in.
might be something that you might want to start. If you
Yes. Yeah, no. It's also like, here's the other thing. Boston Hassle is the perfect example. That's not like a game event. People do like tattoos and like sell coffee and pottery and prints and all sorts of stuff. You can just roll in there. Like, if you're a game developer, just like submit to things, like submit to markets, submit to spaces where you don't think maybe you belong, or like more non-traditional, because also you get like a way different audience too. And you never know, like something might flop at a game expo and then do great at a zine fest, you know. It's like, I don't have it up here. Amaze is, if you're unfamiliar, Amaze is kind of like, it's easier to best described as like a film festival sort of event, but about games, and very alternative, very like more experimental. And you know, that was a tiny event in like a one-room thing, and I did like about as good as I did as PAX, because it was like, that's the most hyper-focused I can get. And you know, it's about how do you find your 7,000 people, you know. Maybe they're at Fan Expo, maybe they're like in different places. Like, you never know where your people are. Well, thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? Actually, wait, can I add to that? Really quick?
Yes, go ahead.
Andrew mentioned that we were doing farmers markets and stuff together around probably 5 years ago or something at this point. So one of the things that was really interesting about doing that is that I think people are really interested in local games specifically. People don't know that games are made here. People don't know that a lot of people don't know that it's possible for one person to make a game. So if you're out there, one person selling video games, it's a really good opportunity to connect with people in a way that you can't at an event like PAX, where you're one of 10,000 booths, right? So I think there's really interesting opportunities there that are largely going unused, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that.
No. You can be the person when someone's like, I don't play games. You can be the person that gets them to play games. My favorite line to use if you're in that situation, be like, well, these aren't games. This is art in the shape of a video game. And sometimes people go, oh, they still walk away and don't buy anything most of the time. But I feel like they thought a little more. But I'm going to get to the next person go.
So you found like a lot of different game devs from like all over the world for this. So as an enjoyer of niche art, how do you find niche art?
I'm a freak. I love I love niche art a lot. I am. To put an example at work, I am listening to the Bandcamp dailies on my Bandcamp app, and then on my break I fire up the Criterion app and watch short films, and then I've spent over a decade just immersed in looking at indie games, and like, especially like, if you're looking for games, the best thing you can do is if you go on itch, follow people and use your feed and see what they are recommending and what they are playing, and keep following more, because you'll find so much good stuff just like through just what other people are recommending, because nobody loves artists more than other artists, as someone who is in the position of being like the artist kind of thing, to the point where like usually when people go, oh, when I'm at an event, people go, oh, I know what this is. I'll be like, oh, you're a developer? And 99% of the time they're like, yes. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, I was in it. But yeah, no, it is like, you just look. I also have a list, I think I call it To Play. It has like 10,000 games on it, and they're pretty cool.
Next question.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey.
Yeah, I have I guess a two-part question. My first question is like, how serious do game developers take the soundtrack for their games? And like, if someone is an artist who is interested in making soundtracks for games, like, what's the first place you would start? And my second question is like, if someone has no experience in game development but has a brilliant idea for a video game, like, how would they get like their idea out there? Like,
For the first one, I think maybe like jams is just a good way to be like, oh yeah, or either I made songs or you can use my songs I already have for like your game in a jam. I can't speak to all artists. Soundtracks are probably going to vary wildly for each person. Like sometimes like, oh, it's the most important thing I ever have, and sometimes like, oh, it's an afterthought because I'm listening to my own music the entire time and go, oh no, I forgot to put music in this. But to get into it, the thing I would recommend of getting into game dev is to work very small. Find an engine that does 90% of the work for you and just get ideas out. Probably not the idea you're thinking of, put that aside for a second, and just like try different things. I encountered someone at PAX, she was like, oh, I'm trying to get into games. I said, hey, try using Bitsy. Bitsy is a simple, you can use it on your phone. It's like a lo-fi 1-bit engine, and on like, there was an artist, so I'd follow them on Instagram because I follow artists everywhere. And then I saw checking my notification, like, oh, they made a game in Bitsy like that weekend. And like, things like that, things like RPG Maker, things like, Unity, kit bash the hell out, or kit bash I think is a technical term. Use assets a lot. The easiest way to describe it is, when you watch a movie, they didn't make every prop in that movie. So like using assets, like using a lot of the pre-made stuff, like whatever gets you to making a game, but don't stress on like the perfect game. Just stress on making a game. And because like who knows, like it's the nature of an artist. The idea that must be the idea you get out. Sometimes you go, oh, that's not the idea I had anymore. I changed. I have a different idea now. But yeah, just make quick.
Audio stuff specifically, there's also a local group called Game Audio Boston.
Game Audio Boston for the larger crowd. I always forget. I'm too far away. I can only come so infrequently.
Question from a young developer.
Yes.
So I've been making a game for this one streamer that I watch who has a semi-large following but does have a lot of does respond to a bunch of like emails and good game suggestions. Is there any way to make the game since it's a side-scroller?
I'm not sure. Wait, I think I missed something there at the end there. What do you mean make the game into a side-scroller?
Well, it already is a side-scroller. I'm just asking for ideas.
Oh, I don't know. Sorry. Make him run right to left, the little guy. Really, it's just like I was doing this. I was having a conversation like pre this discussion with people, and part of games is like they're made up. They're not real. Whatever ideas you might have, just try them. Even if they don't fit into the traditional side-scrolling mold, you might have I want my character to do this. I want to be able to do this. So you can just try it. I would say, especially you're not even near worrying about what if this is my job. So you have the infinite freedom to just experiment and do things that maybe wouldn't make sense for a platformer if you're coming from a traditional platformer sense, but might make sense to you. Just follow that artist spark in you, I suppose, is a easy way to put it. Maybe I'm not sure, but just do it, I guess. And don't worry about it being perfect. Worry about being done. It'll never be perfect, but it will be done. I've never seen a perfect game in my life. but I've seen a lot of finished games. Maybe Room of a Thousand Snakes is perfect.
Say desert golfing.
Desert golfing is pretty good. The closest I might get is Room of a Thousand Snakes. It comes in, does what it wants, and leaves. Actually, it's not perfect. You can't even play it anymore because I think it was Unity Web, which is unavailable now.
Desert golfing. Oh,
Desert Bus is also perfect. Maybe that's thing to speak on, like the bit of like to go on a weird to jump on. You mentioned Desert Bus for a second. We're talking about Desert Bus now still. A 10, 20, 25-year-old game from like a joke game from like the Saturn on this Penn and Teller collection because it's interesting. How many technically proficient, head of their class video games that came out in that era do we never think about while we're still thinking about Desert Bus, That's a lot of art. That's the one thing I forgot to do was pull that Brian Eno quote where he says, the stuff that sucks is the stuff that we like. That's not the perfect version, but look it up. You'll find it eventually. Maybe I should look it up. It's a very good. The imperfection. I try to do a better justice. I think it's the imperfections of the medium are with time like the things that we pulled to. But I think you have another. You're squatted.
Yeah. So my question is, well, first off, your talk has been about having no money to make a game. But however, what happens if if I have a part-time job working in grocery or retail, and then I use that money, some of that money I make to make towards my game? How do I go on spending the budget from my job to the game and controlling my spending, if I have bills to pay or something like that?
Yes. To really, this is getting exciting crunch. It is bills first, obviously. It's you find yourself a cushion. Like for me, it was kind of weirdly easy to transition to this because I was the money I spent on Indiepocalypse, I was spending every month on my student loans and my car payments. So I already budgeted for those every month, and then that money went into my bank now, and I go, what if it didn't do that? What if it went into art? But it is you find what you would spend money on, and it's probably not marketing maybe, because I think you need to probably spend a lot to get something out of that. So it's about finding what in your particular situation works for you, and sometimes it might be you might sit down tonight and look and go, I can't spend any money on this. Or I can skip a takeout meal here and there, and then I can buy some assets. I can do this. I can look around, but also you scrounge for the free stuff as much as you can. You dig around for those free goodies where you can find them, and just operate. To press. I use those tapes as an example because to press if you want to I'm going to put my game out on PS4, I'm going to press a PS4 disc. That'd be very expensive. You have to go through somebody. But to put them on a USB stick and put them in something is dirt cheap. It's a couple $100 up front because you got to buy in bulk anyway. But I would say if you really need to I'm a weird person. I do a lot of stuff in my head. I do a radio show. I forgot the radio. I do a radio show every week too. As part of the collaboration where I just talk to other developers. I try to, I'll finish your question first before I go on that wild little tangent. But something you might just take a spreadsheet, do a spreadsheet a couple weeks and be okay, and kind of math out how much money you have left over from a paycheck every week after traditional spending, and go okay, I can set aside $20 or $50 a week. I know I can do that, or so maybe I'll set aside a month's work, and then I will get a table at Boston Fig. I can use a week, and I can get a table at Boston Hassel. It's about finding the things because the thing about DIYs is there is always something within your budget, even if your budget is zero. Sometimes you're do I know someone who's running a market? They'll give me a free table. That's what Toronto Games Week was. I mean, it wasn't free because I had to go to Toronto, but if I lived in Toronto, it would have been free. And sometimes that stuff is demo night. Demo night's free. You can just come down here to demo night. I mean, demo is not a market, but like you can pretend you can be like open your code up and be like you want to buy some indie games. People have offered to buy stuff. I'm like, well, I'm not prepared to do this. I don't have cash on. I don't have my Square reader on. I'm not. But yeah, that's, I would say the most practical solution is just really just like get a spreadsheet, budget it out every week, see what you got, and then look at things that match up to that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, just a general question. Did you say that Indiepocalypse is going to be at Anime NYC this year?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to be there, so I might see you there.
Perfect. I'm gonna ship my big fancy booth there for my PAX. I think that's the thing I still haven't figured out how to do. I'm gonna do is ship all those things. But yeah, radio show collaboration. I do a radio show every week, and that's just a thing that I just emailed people to be like, hey, you want to talk on a radio show? Because if you say, hey, let's get on a Discord call for 2 hours with some strangers, it's weird. But if you take those same strangers and you call it a podcast, people will get on there immediately. And so I can connect people from like, hey, you're over in like South Korea, you're in Australia. We're also, none of us have money. I'm in the US, none of us have money to travel. Hey, we're all in the same room together, you know. It allows, because, you know, I'm here. Local scenes are the heart of DIY, you know, because also the heart of DIY is finding the one person. I think a lot about, I heard once the advice of how to make it in Hollywood is to have a friend who makes it in Hollywood. And it's similar to like why you support your local scene, you know. Hey, it's hard for anyone to, but if one person gets their foot in the door, they can just like, all of you can just sneak in that door, you know, sneak in those PAX after parties, you know, get to those venues, have you talk to the right people, those kinds of things. And so, yeah, that part of that radio show is also connecting people together and being like democratizing the space. I do not like the idea of the advice you see here sometimes in, you know, creator spaces, professional spaces of like, oh, make sure you just come up with your own crowd, you know, stick, you know, yeah, you hear from people like quote unquote in these higher echelons, but sometimes I think if you, then that same person they would tell that to made $10 million on their game tomorrow, I think they would they would suddenly be in the right crowd to hang out with them, you know.
You know, I actually forgot my important question.
Okay.
So we're going to go with something different.
Yes.
Have you heard of this audio piece, let's call it, called The Most Unwanted Song?
I don't think so.
I'm going to show you that later.
Okay.
It is, for anyone who doesn't know, it is a statistical survey of the U.S., I believe, in like the 90s. They made 2 pieces out of it based on what people said they liked most in music and one that people said they liked least in music. So imagine things, just normal things like, you know, soprano, cowboys, rapping,
Yeah.
opera music, children singing advertising songs. It's just the audio equivalent of waterboarding. It's beautiful.
Yes.
I'm going to show you that later.
Have you heard of Melt Banana?
That sounds familiar.
They're a Japanese noise rock duo, and the last album of Screech, I forget the name of it off the top of my head. So they do very short, very loud, noisy songs, and the final track of that one of their albums called Untitled is the previous 25 songs or so all played together, all played at the exact same time. Exact same time. It's chaos.
Actually, that is something my dad likes. I just remember that's why I've heard about Banana.
Yes. So it is like pure audio chaos, but it's also like beautiful, and you kind of like if your brain is broken, you have like you're like that's normal. Hello.
Exactly. That's why the thing you were talking about earlier with like the music you remember the most.
Yeah.
Is sort of the bad music.
Right.
Or like the stuff, the orange ones that stick out in our brain are usually the bad ones.
Yes.
It's funny because the most wanted music is the counterpart to the most unwanted song.
Right.
It's just like generic R&B with lyrics about love. I actually don't remember a single word from it.
Right.
Whereas the most unwanted song, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this is the part where they sing about Ram Kapoor.
Yes, right. That is like
they sing about Ramadan. They just sing about Ramadan for like 5 minutes, and then they go back to like cowboys rapping.
an important practice for anyone is to look up like what is considered some of the most popular things, and then look up what was like the most what are like the most critically acclaimed, what are the pieces of art that stick with us over the decades, and then what are the most popular pieces during that, like the most financially profitable things during that time. And often those are 2 entirely different circles with like very little exception. You know, like I mean, Purple Rain is perfect, but not everything is Purple Rain. You know. Yes.
Any more questions? That's probably last question.
Yes. Yeah. And I was not ignoring you. I was trying to look at that Brian Eno quote.
So, what was kind of the moment that you felt like this is the thing you were going to commit to? Like this is a viable idea that you want to like make your thing for the next 5 years, or up to now?
I don't know. I just like kept. I think I was. If you were around Boston for like 6 years ago, if you're around the Boston, occasionally I was there being like, somebody should make like an anthology of games or something. Somebody should make one of these things. Then it just became me, and then like because I do it a month in advance, I just don't ever not do it. If that makes sense. And now I'm actually like doing a full month in advance. So technically, July's is done. And I'm organizing, what's August? August is the month of July. I'm organizing August currently. So it's just like pure momentum, really. Like it's one of those things where I don't know how to. And that's like part of the thing of like, just like I said, just releasing things, even if they quote unquote fail. It's like, I want to keep myself to a schedule. I want to keep putting something out every month. You know, this classically like sock pop, you know, has been around for like 10 years or whatever. And you know, and not everyone is sock pop. Sock pop still does make very traditional like video games kind of stuff that has like mechanics and win states or whatever. And so do a lot of the more, you know, like your punk cakes and what have you. But part of what you're able to do that is just like, oh, I want to do this every month. I want to do this doing this every month is madness. I would not recommend people do this every month. Do it every like quarter. But just like having like a schedule of not like I want to put out a game every month, every 2 months, and it doesn't matter. Or like something that I think that's interesting to try is like try sketching, like try jamming in the traditional sense, not jamming to finish a game in like a weekend, but just jamming, you know, just like I'm just jamming. Maybe it's like not even a game when it's done, but there's like a mechanic or something that works. But I'm not going to keep on rambling forever, because I could.
There is one more question.
Yes.
Are you looking for contributors to Indiepocalypse?
Am I looking for contributors to Indiepocalypse?
And how can they reach you?
Indiepocalypse.com/submit, perhaps. Might be the easiest.
Was that a yes?
Yes, I'm always looking. Indiepocalypse is always eternally open to contributors, which is always at indiepocalypse.com/submit, which is just an jam page. So you just take your game and you just add it to that, and I go, easy way to do it. Low effort for you, low effort for me. I get the game easily. You don't have to spend a lot of work filling out a Google form or whatever for some reason. But yes, and always like I stress that I'm not like when I say I am looking for the fringes. I am always looking for the fringes. I am looking for things that are ill-defined within as games. If someone like me go, that's not a video game. I go, yes, it is, because you interact with it. You touch it. You touch buttons. And that does something, and that's video games to me, baby. Is touching things and things happen. Or actually, I think that the definition we decided on the radio show a couple of weeks ago, where our video games are things where there are keys and you use those to unlock doors, and anything that you do that in is a video game. But I'm fluid on the definition. If you don't have keys and doors, I might allow them. But
all right, where can folks find you on the internet?
On the internet, barely. If you're the kind of person who loves someone who posts about 4 times a month about announcements and then otherwise just keeps to themselves, I think that's Pizza Pranks at whatever platform we're on. You'll find my username there, and sometimes it's posting, sometimes it's not. That determines whether or not I'm using the platform. Or just, if you're curious, just search Indiepocalypse. As I mentioned earlier, I got great SEO. I am like the first results.
All right, I think that is going to do it for us tonight. Round of applause again for Andrew. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank everyone.
All right, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for joining us here for Boston Indies. We'll be back next month.